Hey everyone, welcome to Vue.jsTalks number 20. If you're here live, amazing. If you're watching later, please leave a comment from the future. Did JavaScript finally get a stable date API everywhere? Tonight is a very 2026 lineup, AI plus codebases plus Vuetify0. We'll talk about using AI with real data, get history. We'll benchmark agentic coding across Vue UI libraries, and we'll finish with a deep look at where Vuetify is heading.
Our first speaker is Michal Dziedzinski. Hi, Michal. Nice to see you there on our Vue.jsTalks. So Michal is a senior software engineer at Booksy, based in Poland. Huge fan of video games and board games collector. And he really hopes that he'll find some friends to play with him someday. So, hi, Michal. Nice to see you. And I'm passing the mic to you and a screen sharing.
Hi, thanks. Yeah. Okay, should work. So, hi everyone. Today, I want to talk about a problem every developer knows. So, opening a new repo and having no idea where anything lives. This is more relevant today than ever. In the age of AI, our workflow has shifted. We no longer stick to just our tech stack because AI makes it easier to modify unfamiliar code. We constantly jump between different technologies and repositories across the company. But there's a catch. Yeah? Static documentation only tells you what should be true or what used to be true. And AI relying on it can easily hallucinate. The actual truth is hidden in the Git history, in every commit and architectural decision. While facing these challenges at Booksy, I decided to build a tool that extracts this ground truth automatically. I wanted to empower not only developers, but also non-technical team members who need to understand the code evolution without being lost in the syntax. My tool puts that context directly into the hands of AI, so anyone, regardless of their technical background, can get clear, factual answers about any project. But now, a moment about me. So, as it was said, I am senior software engineer at Booksy. I also was contributor to open source project Vue Storefront and Storefront UI, that maybe some of you might recognize as a Vue community. So over the years, I had experience mainly with e-commerce projects, but also products like teamwork.com and currently Booksy. Yeah. So on the personal side, as also was said, I'm a video games fan, currently playing Baldur's Gate 3 and EA FC 26. I am a huge fan of tabletop games. However, since having small kids, my status has officially shifted from player to collector. For now, I'm just building an impressive library and hoping I'm successfully raising my future gaming party. I'm a Real Madrid fan, though I have to admit being a Madridista right now is painful. It's been an awful season and it's testing my patience. Lego, so after 20-year dark age, I've fallen back in love with Lego. I have particular weakness to the Lord of the Rings sets. As you can see on the slide, I'm waiting for Minas Tirith sets, but I have no idea where I will find place for that. And I also like sports, and I have not as much time as I used to have, but my favorites are taekwondo, mountain biking, running, and downhill skiing. So let's come back to the main topic. Here's the core argument. So static docs, readmes, wiki pages, author tags lag behind development by definition. Yeah, they're manually maintained, so they're always a little wrong. Git history, on the other hand, is immutable. Every commit is a fact. From those facts, I can calculate real ownership, real churn, and real bus factor mathematically, not by asking anyone. And crucially, that makes it a perfect hallucination-resistant context for AI. So the tool has two parts. On the left, skill.md, which I call the brain, is the instruction set for the AI, what triggers the skill, what workflow to follow, and strict citation rules that prevent the model from guessing. On the right, this onboardings.sh script, the muscle. It's a pure bash and AWK, zero dependencies. It handles the actual work, parsing Git logs, tracking file renames, aggregating statistics. The brain tells the AI what to do. The muscles does the computation. This is the key mechanism. At the top, you have a standard LLM, probabilistic, capable of confidently stating things that are simply wrong. My script intercepts that. It injects a structured template filled with calculated Git metrics, top files, area owners, repo context, directly into what the model reads. By the time the AI answers, it's not guessing. It's reading a table. The output at the bottom is a deterministic insight. The same input always produces the same answer. Let me show you what happens inside the script. So first, raw git. I run git log, numstat to extract every file touch, rename, and date. That fits into AWK processing, lightning fast calculation of churn, and binary file status. No Python, no Node, nothing to install. The output is intermediate TSV files, statistical map of the code base. Finally, those get formatted into structured markdown, injected into the context blocks like top modules and area owners that the LLM reads as facts. Phases 4 through 6 are about assembling the final output. Phase 4 generates the markdown files, hotspots, modules, areas. Phase 5 is where context injection happens. Raw data plus prompt rules produce onboarding prompt.md. Notice the warning, rely exclusively on provided data, do not guess. And that instruction is baked into the template. Phase 6 produces the human readable summary onboarding.md at the repository root. Teams have full control over the analysis scope through environment variables. Scenes controls the time window. Default is 1 year. You can narrow it to last quarter, for example, or extend it to 2 years for a legacy audit or something. Top controls how many items appear in each ranking. Module depth controls how deep the directory grouping goes. You just prepend this to the command, no config files, no setup. This is what hotspot detection looks like conceptually. Every node is a file, and the red one in the center has high churn and high touches. It changes often, and it changes a lot. The combination is a signal. It might be the core abstraction everyone depends on. It might be technical debt. It might be the file that needs to be split. Either way is the first place a new developer should look. My script produces this ranking automatically without anyone having to know the code base first. Ownership mapping is the other core output. For each module grouped by directory depth, the script mathematically identifies the top 3 contributors based on the actual commit history. So not self-reported ownership, not org chart position. If Jane Doe has 450 commits and 1,200 lines of churn in a module, she's the owner. When a new developer asks who do I talk to about payments, the AI doesn't guess. It reads the table and gives a name with evidence. The script produces 2 kinds of output from a single run. For the human eye, onboarding.md lands at the repository root, a concise snapshot of hotspots and top contributors readable in 2 minutes. For the machine eye, a set of dense deterministic context files in generated docs generated folder. So owners by module, hotspots, and the assembled onboarding prompt. The AI reads those. You read the summary, so same data to audiences. Here's how it works end-to-end in the terminal. A developer asks, who is the expert on the payment module? That query triggers activation. Cloud code recognizes the intent and invokes the skill. Execution, the agent runs onboarding script in the background. Context load, it reads the generated onboarding prompt.md and response, it answers with hard data, not a guess, not a hallucination. Based on commits from the last year, the primary owner is Jane Doe. And then the loop is ready for the next question. Deployment is a single step. You take the onboarding analysis folder from Booksy Cloud Skills repo and drop it into any repository, and that's it. No package installation, no configuration, no build step. The skill.md file is auto-detected by the AI agent because the script is pure bash and AWK. It runs on any machine that has Git. A new developer clones the repo and immediately has access to the full analysis capability. And also, like other solution is just to install plugin from Cloud Marketplace. Yeah, and what makes this more than just a script is that it follows an open standard for agent skills. So portability, drop it into any Booksy repository, front desk, so the front end for web, backend, or mobile without modification. Centralization, it lives in Booksy Cloud Skills repo and is distributed organization-wide from one place. And interoperability, so the skill format isn't tied to cloud code, specifically any agentic platform that supports this open standard can consume it. So I know you can use it with Cursor, for example. So I highly recommend trying this approach within your own companies, or just to maybe look for some like existing solutions. I'm sure there are some. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. If you want to connect me or ask some additional questions that will come to your mind, like after this presentation, there's a QR code to my LinkedIn profile. Thanks.
Thank you, Michal. That was a nice one. May I ask you, where did you get, or did you ever get some inspiration from somewhere, or just invented that by yourself?
No, I've seen some. I was on some AI-related stream on YouTube, and someone just threw that idea in comments. So I just thought, okay. And at the same time, in my company, we have approach like T-shape, so jump from one technology to another one. So yeah, I had to like be more familiar with Android or iOS code base. So yeah, I decided maybe it's a good moment to implement that in our company. And yeah.
Nice. So you actually solved the pain point from your own
yeah.
projects. Cool.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's what we're supposed to do with the help of AI and solve the problems we have. Yep. Thank you. Thanks again. I'm just reminding that if anybody have any questions, please drop them in the chat or say it out loud. Let me check the chat. Do we have any? I don't think so. We don't have any. But if you will have anything, just drop in the chat. And thanks again, Michal. Let's move on to our next speaker in the agenda. Let me share my screen again. All right. So our next speaker is David Moshal. Hi, David. Nice to see you there.
Hi there.
So yeah, David is a really impressive guy. David is a veteran of software entrepreneur, founder of Auction Logis LLC, has run hundreds of high-stakes auctions, mostly using Vue.js, totaling over $4 billion. Posted the original SFC proposal on the Reactive.js issue tracker, picked by Ivan Yu as an inspiration for Vue.js and by Rich Harris for Svelte. MD, MPhil, and biomedical engineer and fellow of the Royal College of Anaesthetic, UK, equivalent to US board certification in anesthesiology and critical care. And talk of David is Agentic Engineering with Vue.js, benchmarking across 9 UI frameworks. So passing the mic to you, David.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that's an impressive guy. I don't know. I hope to meet him one day. Okay. I haven't used this Google Meet for a while, so let me see how I even do this thing. What do I want? Yes, that. Okay. First of all, well done, Michal. That's impressive work, and wow, I like your approach. I'm very pleased to see you're not using a MCP service. Skills and the script is definitely the way to go. Well done. I want to connect with you afterwards and hear more about that. That's very impressive. Okay, so let's see. What am I supposed to be doing here? All right. I'm not going to go over this again. Can you see me okay? It's asking me questions about allowing picture-in-picture.
Yeah, we see the stream.
Okay. You've been through my bio and my background. Overqualified, I guess, for all sorts of things. There are a few things that I left out the first time, which I've added here. Yeah, enough about me. So that claim about contributing to Vue.js is a bold claim to make, but here's the original. So back in 2013, I was looking for a JavaScript replacement for Flex, which is an Adobe ActionScripts real-time UI system. And I wanted something reactive. React was not reactive. Angular was a mess. There were some nice frameworks out there, Knockout.js, and Backbone, and a few others. But I really wanted something that looked like the Excel spreadsheet with flow-based programming, where you had A equals B plus C, and if B and C change, then A changes. And the only guy I could see who understood that and was doing that correctly was Rich Harris on the Reactive project. But he was wrapping the HTML in JavaScript, like React does today, which was a mess, in my view, and still is in the React world, for two reasons. One is cognitively, I think when you're building something, a user interface, you really want to think about it, as hierarchical components, not as fragments that all have to be put together. And you're all doing Vue.js, so you understand what I'm saying about that. So I proposed that he turn it around and wrap the scripts in HTML, not HTML in the script. And we went back and forth a bit on issue 299, and then Rich proposed the proposal, which led him to go and do Svelte. Now I understand, having seen Evan Yu do presentations, he talks about the inspiration for the single file components coming from quote, a comment or proposal he saw on the Reactive.js website, and I happen to believe that's was my comment. So that's my claim to fame. Thank you. So Rich acknowledges that. Evan, I haven't heard from Evan, so waiting to hear. So let me first put a disclaimer, because what I'm about to show now, I didn't do for the purposes of an academic study or even for the purposes of presenting to anybody. So somewhat embarrassingly, I know we have people in the audience who actually have created 2 frameworks that I did not include. So I apologize up front for not including Vuetify and and Vuetistic. So, sorry about that. I had I known I was going to present to you guys, I would definitely have included your frameworks. Maybe next time, Pavel. Exactly. So I'm going to go through this. There are probably too many slides to go through in detail. As I said, I didn't do this with a view to presenting it. It was internal work to choose the right Vue 3 framework for my own personal use. And I made a decision. I'm not going to tell you what that is. You guys can have a look at the output and decide what you like. But the first question is, why not just switch to React? Because the AI models have supposedly been trained on much more React than they have Vue.js. And if you just naively give it a screenshot and try to do it in React, you'll get quite a good result. And if you try to do it in Vue.js, you don't get quite a few results unless you tweak it a little bit, hey, John. And I'm going to talk about how you can tweak it. So the problem with React, as you guys all know, is you can get a user interface, but you try and do something highly reactive, something like a trading app, and immediately you run into fundamentally broken problems with that framework. It's been broken from the beginning, and I don't think it's getting any better. But as I understand it conceptually, and again, I haven't looked at the internals, and I may have this completely wrong, but my understanding is there's a timer loop, which is going to start at the top of your app and go through the tree, and at each node ask if it's changed or not. And if it's changed, it's going to rerun the entire function, not parts of the fragments of the function. It's going to rerun the whole thing, and it's going to also look to see if there's any cached memo data somewhere in the process and use that. But of course, the fundamental problem is you've got this timer loop that's going through all of this, and inside these little components, these nodes, you have other timer loops. And so you end up with the terrible, worst conditions you can have, which is non-deterministic race conditions. So you all tried it probably with highly interactive projects, and you get this nice sort of thing from React, and then you have these runtime problems, and the AI has no idea what to do with all of that. So I actually switched to React briefly because in the early days of Claude, you could get a little script in the web Claude interface. We shared CN and React, and it was all very great to start out with. But you try and take that into a highly productive application, and then you start to have problems. So the next question is, well, why is it that you can get these screenshots to components better in React than Vue? For example, Vue0, Stitch, Bolt, Magic Patterns, you can give them a screenshot and you get this React component, but they won't do that in Vue. I think there were some attempts to do some of these in Vue, but I don't know that any of them are at the same level as the React components are. So the question then is why? And I guess the conventional wisdom is that React has been trained on an order of magnitude more code. The AI models have been trained on an order of magnitude more code, React code, than they have Vue. So they're able to just look at this. You give them a problem or a screenshot, and they can go and recall from their training corpus, a screenshot. Whereas with Vue, the AI model has to do it a little differently. It has to reason, design the interface, and then translate that to Vue. And then if you add a UI framework, now you have to design. The AI has to design, translate against the API surface of the framework that it may not be familiar with. So that's the I guess sort of the conventional wisdom that the naive view is that the AI models have been trained on more React than Vue. But I don't think that's actually true. At least I don't think that's completely true. I think that's probably half the story. I think the other half is actually the tooling and how you set up the project before you start, how you configure the AI tools. And so that's what this experiment did. Spent a lot of time setting up the tooling correctly and then running the same prompt. And the results are quite surprising, actually. If you just to tell you, it does exceptionally well with all 9 frameworks. 8 of the frameworks, actually. One is that problematic. So let's talk about some of this. So I apologize ahead of time because there's way too much text on these slides, and I'm not going to go through all of it. But we're going to cover some of this. So as hey Pavel, no problem, we have time. All right, you might have time. So what did I do? So first of all, I wanted to give it a non-trivial problem. Not a simple web page, but something that would be more like I guess what you would call an admin UI, some kind of enterprise application, a single page application that has enough complexity to make it interesting as a domain model, and also the user interface also has some complexity as well. So the idea was there's a domain model, and then the user interface is going to have master detail and also Rails, and all connected up. So this is not a prompt starting just with a raw prompt. It's starting with screenshots. And again, I didn't plan this as an experiment, an academic thing, or research that I was going to present. Had I done that, I probably would have just tried to just start with a raw prompt. But this is a real project. I had given prompts to Google Stitch and to Magic Patterns. And in the case of Magic Patterns, I got this React user interface. And in the case of Google Stitch, I got an HTML user interface. And I wanted to just take those screenshots and have the Vue version of it. I wanted to actually convert it to Vue, just raw React to Vue or HTML to Vue. But I thought more interesting, I'll just see if I could push it a bit and just do screenshots, domain model, see what we get from the frameworks. And giving the same prompt to all the frameworks and organizing the code base so that the model didn't see all the other frameworks. So there were branches in work trees, and same prompt given to 9 different frameworks in separate work trees, so they didn't see each other's work. So the domain model looks something like this. A legal entity has got users and user groups which have users. Users participate in markets. Markets have got auctioneers, user groups, and then there's sessions attached to users and markets attached schedules. So it's a relational sort of problem where you want to navigate from your legal entity to a user group, to market, and backwards and forwards. So there's some complexity there. So the screenshots look like this. So again, you can get the same sort of thing from Google Stitch and from Magic Patterns and probably other frameworks, but I think this was Magic Patterns, where I gave it the domain model, and the domain model is basically a Pinea store with functions, and from the Pinea store and the functions in the Pinea store, the domain model is rich enough, just one file, maybe 1,000 lines, for the AI to figure out how to render it. And I told it I want Rails, and I want the rest of the Rails. I don't know if you can see my mouse, Pavel? Wants to move around?
Yeah, I will see the mouse.
So a Rail, master, detail, and navigate through all of these things. So non-trivial, not particularly complicated, but also not that trivial. And then the user view, again, Rail, master, detail, the market view, Rail, master, detail, and sessions. So that's what I wanted. I gave it 4 screenshots and a TypeScript file with about 1,000 lines, which had a Pinea store and functions, and that was rich enough for them to figure out, for a model to figure out. So that was basically the spec. That you're looking at the spec, the domain model, and 4 screenshots. So I asked it 2 questions. The one is I just wanted to produce that shell, like I showed you. And then a second one, I wanted, because a lot of these AI frameworks are good at something like greenfield. They can do something the first time, but then if you want to make changes, then it starts to get painful. So I wanted to create that shell structure I just showed you. And then a second step, I wanted the AI model to do inline editing in one of the detailed pages. So the ability to in the form, in the components, not as a model, just in the component, be able to edit one of those detail forms, the user form. So that was the experiment. Now the trick to all of this was actually, before you get to the experiment, to do some work setting up the project for AI and for the framework. Okay, so I'm not going to read all of these slides because I'm going to cover it, and we only have 20 minutes, and I want to get through quite a bit here. So what frameworks did I choose? Again, apologies, Pavel and Andre, and Yevgeny, if you're on the line. I did not choose VueJS, nor did John. Apologies, I didn't choose Vuetify. Yeah, I see this. Yeah, sorry, Andre. Yep, apologize. Have to do it again, I suppose. There are a lot of frameworks, and I just chose. There's one of these frameworks that I particularly like, Naive UI, actually. So that was what I was focusing on, and actually, well, I'll let you guys decide which one you like, because I've got them all running right now, and they're running on Vuetify0, and you can all play with them. So I chose Prime View, Shared CN View, Element Plus, Naive UI, Quasar, and 3 and 4. Now, my original, the Vue project that I'm replacing is actually Vue 3. Sorry, Ant Design Vue version 3 running on Vue 2. Okay, so just so you know, my bias is actually like Vue 2, not a fan of Vue 3, but I guess I have to use it. And the reason for that is I think the cognitive load increases with Vue 3 for both humans and agents, and I think that's problematic. Separate story. So I also include Ant Design 4, Reka UI, which is headless, and Vent. Vent is really sort of an outlier here. I just threw it in because I know it's mobile at first, and I wasn't really looking at mobile, but I hadn't seen that framework before, and I just added it to the list. And I didn't include any material design libraries. John, I apologize, but I knew I wasn't going to choose a material UI for this actual project, and it wasn't, had I known I was going to present to you and there's a research project and so on, I would definitely have included your framework. It's not a knock against any frameworks that are not included. It was just I was really interested in one of them, and I just threw in a bunch of others. So they are actually running. I wonder if you guys can see if I run them. Can you see my screen?
If you show on the Vue 3 AI evals, then yes.
Yeah. Right. So by the way, any of you could go. I don't know how to go back on this thing. Oh, I'm in a different screen. So it's Vue 3 evals at Vuetify0, and I'll give you the link. You can play with them. But if you have a look, this is I'll go quickly through what they look like. So just so you understand, the first thing I did was the first few attempts. There were 3 attempts to get this right, but once I had figured out the tooling, all of these I'm showing you are one shot without me doing anything to them. The one shot. This is one shot. Once this tooling was set up, given the domain model and the screens and a prompt, which I'll share at the end, all of the framework, all 8 of them were able to one-shot it without too many problems. 6 had no problems. 2 of them had a couple of problems, and 1 had a lot of problems and gave up on that one, just 1. So it's all. You can click on the rails. You can get your legal entities. You can click through them. You can click on users, and from users, I can go to the markets. Markets, you can go to trading groups and click around. And so this is all one shot. I didn't do anything other than give it the prompt. So that's one of them. And design 2. I'm sorry, the second one, and design 4 on Vue 3. Yeah. Again, just from the screenshots and a prompt, right? Element Plus, same sort of thing. You can click through. It all links up, so it's relational. You can get started at the markets, click on auctioneer, get the user, click around, all linked up. EVUI. Sorry, let me show you what I meant by in-form editing, which is the second part. First, it's just to do this, and then there was a second prompt to ask it. I want to be able to go to a user and edit the user in the form, right? Not in a modal. So Prime View, or with their default, whatever the AI model decided to set as the styling from the screenshots. I didn't give it any sort of styling instructions other than the UI. And again, you can inform edit. Some of them do that better than others. Reka, for example, struggles with styling. For example, its components are not that rich. You see how that you can imagine that you get into problems with that sort of. You spend a lot of time, I guess, getting the styling right on top of it. Shared CN, I think, had a similar sort of issue with it. So not great components actually. Bent was interesting. Again, this was just my little experiment. What if I did a mobile first one? And it is exceptionally well, I think. Again, struggles a little bit. You can see it sort of doesn't have as rich desktop components. Quasar was the problem. This one failed miserably. Quasar did not handle things. I think it couldn't do the editing. Yeah, it was unable to do the editing. It took a very, very long time, maybe several minutes, whereas the others were done in maybe 1 or 2 minutes. This platform, and we just went on for ages. Maybe after 10, 20 minutes, I gave up on it, to be honest. But this I didn't show you the editing for this, so quite nice, rich frameworks, and I'd imagine that Vuetistic and Vuetify would be able to do this as well. Naive UI, I don't know if I showed you the editing of it. I really like this framework actually. Right, we can come back to that. How do I get out of this thing? Back to my. Am I back to the Vue 3 evals? Did you guys see all the stuff I was sharing or not?
Yeah. Well, we were looking at the different variants of the app, and right now we see Vue 3 evals, Vue 3 AI evals still with the tiles of UI frameworks.
Okay. I wanted to. How do I go back? I'm sorry. I mean, I wanted to share with you guys the.
You probably have to change the source of sharing your screen to something different.
Can you see like my Google page now?
No.
Let's see.
Also, in the meantime, we have a question from John in the chat. Are the interfaces that they made interactive? Like if you click on a different button, things would change?
Yeah, I just show that. Could you see what I was doing or not? Did you see? I don't know if you guys saw what I was just doing.
Yeah, we were looking at the different things. So you clicked on the edit stuff and on the tabs on the left, so everything got changed.
John, what's your question?
I think you can speak out loud, John, if you want.
Oh, I was just, maybe I missed it. I didn't see if you were actually, when you went into some of them, if you were clicking into individual elements, and if any of the systems, like when they made it, did they make it where, yeah, they put this tab list or whatever there, but it actually didn't hook it up to anything, so it doesn't actually
hooked up, all hooked up. Why don't you go? Here's it's running live right now. You can have a look on this Vue 3-evals. Can you see what I'm saying or not? I'm not sure if you guys can see. I'll put the link in the chat. Sorry, I'm not very familiar with this particular system. Chat. So there's the link, John. Can you see it?
Yeah, so I think it is clickable, and yeah, we can touch them.
You can go and click around and play with them. Yeah, it's all looked up. Yeah, so it got that from the domain model. So the domain model basically has it all hooked up. It has the Pinia store, and it has some handlers, and it's clear from it's. Let me see. Do I need to change the?
Maybe it just stop the current sharing and start new one after that.
Can you see my code base here?
Yes.
So the model, John, has a Pineo store, and then it has some components, some functions somewhere down here. Yeah, which mutate the store. So it knew about the Rails, the master edits, the master detail, and from these functions, this 1500 line file, it knew that there were functions that would hook with that would mutate the selected Rail components and master detail. So it's all the AI could figure it out just from a very rich domain model. That makes sense? Thanks, John. You say I have to click stop presenting and then go back? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Just try to share the different source you want.
Okay. All right. I think
so it's V3 EA evals now,
okay,
right?
good. Yeah. Okay. Give me a sec. I must have more than one window open. Okay, you've seen results?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks, John. So all of them were able to get what I call the green field, which is just the framework all hooked up, and 6 of them could do the brown field, which was probably not the right terms, but that was the ability to edit the user in the form. So that was just a little test, not a modal. In the form, had to do some work. Think about that. 2 of them required a little bit of non-AI fixes, and 1 which is Quasar, which is not a success. So then it was a question of grading them. So again, this is not meant to be a scientific study or research paper, so I didn't really think of my own rubric. I asked, so just take a step back. I used Opus 4.6 and GPD 5.4 and to do this. And I asked them to come up with their own rubrics and then grade. So, Codex decided that this was going to be the evaluation criteria. The information architecture was going to be 25 points. And navigation, how detailed was it? The style and polish, again, whatever it decided that was whatever the case was, and score all of these frameworks with this point system. So that was what GPD 5.4 decided to do. And Opus 4.6 decided there were going to be 6 dimensions, each scored 0 to 10, visual fidelity, data completeness, styling, polish, and it was going to go into its weighting. Okay. So just to be clear, I didn't take any of the agent's advice. I chose. I'll let you guys have a look at this. Maybe you can decide which one you would have chosen, and I'll tell you which one I chose and why. So Codex liked ShadCN Vue and Reka, which I guess is because it looked a little bit like it's React ShadCN headless type of training data. It's my guess as to why I did that. Gave it points, and Quasar was a disaster. Vue 4.6 had a sort of a similar rating on scale. Sorry, this is not the scoring points. This is I'll get the scoring one from Opus in a second. This is just looking at how many files there were, and this is really pretty interesting. So, in order to do what I just showed you, Element Plus only needed 8 files and 2,000 lines of code, right? Whereas, say, ShadCN Vue, which the AI agent liked, had 42 different files. Okay, And then the Opus scoring system came up with the scores and the points and so on. And again, putting the headless type, I think Prime Vue is running headless actually. So I think there's some bias. No idea why I'd wanted Ant Design 3. Actually, Ant Design and Vue actually, if you look at the results, actually pretty darn good. Even version 3, running on Vue 3. So because Ant Design 1 is Vue 2, which was my production project written by Evgeny and Pavel. It had been in production, run hundreds of auctions, billions of dollars transacted on it, absolutely fine, but needed to be refreshed because the tooling was really unable to handle it. I don't know. We have time to go through every single framework, but I can see some of them had issues. For example, Vue 3. Needed some help knowing what to do with the styling docs, and design. Vue 4 had a similar sort of problem. Element Plus, it wasn't importing some of the components. Yeah, we don't really have time to go through every single one.
Yeah, so at least some of them use some tools, right?
Sorry, what was that?
As I was seeing from the slides, like ShadCN was using some tools while others are not.
What do you mean by tools?
There was some, if you can get back for a moment, there is some AI tool, like you have MCP.
Yeah, right, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, absolutely, right, the MCP server, right, sorry, I apologize. Let me go right back to the frameworks. So this is something I actually should have gone into in more detail. So Prime Vue and ShadCN had this is what you're calling the tools, Pavel, the MCP servers?
Yeah. So
right.
two of them was relying on something with the fresh context, while others are not. It's just the base from LLM's memory, let's say.
Right, but actually it made them worse. It made them worse, and this is the point. This is what I want to get to, and I haven't got to really my recommendations, conclusions, which is the meat of it. But the real problem was that the AI training corpus has got stale old versions of the setup for all of these frameworks. So this is the problem. So for example, yes, ShadCN has got the MCP server, and so does and so does ShadCN, but both of them point to the wrong MCP server. Wrong one for different versions. So it made things worse. Let's see how to fix it. Hey, John, yeah. And the secret to this, the secret to all of this, and my conclusion is going to be is LMS.txt, right? Embedded in your framework docs. So Pavel, yeah, I left that out. So two of them did have tools. The tools were stale. Made things worse. And maybe I even state that. Where find the so Prime Vue had the MCP and so on. Where was the ShadCN? I'm sorry, I'm going backwards and forwards in my slides. So ShadCN had the wrong MCP. Yeah, ShadCN-Vue.mcp. That's what the naive model, right, on its 6-month-old training data, thought it should set up the project. So let me get into the meat of this whole thing. So sorry, I've been hopping around. I've lost my train of thought here. Not my train of thought, but my slide I need. So, you know what? Easier if I just show you the code. It's going to be just quicker to explain it. Are you on my code, my IntelliJ.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, this is the one problem is you're seeing the end product of 3 phases of setting this up. The first phase was I just asked the AI agent, I said, this is the tool, this is the framework we're going to use, and install it and off you go. So all of them got a prompt, which was the same prompt, which is to look at something specific to that framework, set up Claude, and then take the domain model and the screens and build the thing. So for example, for Ant, it needed to do some scaffolding and some installation and tiny bit of tweaks and fix it up. So just with my prompt and this what I'm showing you here. So there was a first phase to make this work, which is something that should be in LLMs.txt, something like this in all the frameworks, and they'd be good to go. So in many of them, if you just get the AI to say build it, then Ant design Vue 3, you're going to end up with it using completely the wrong tools and wrong instructions, and it's going to be a disaster. And so you have to tweak that, and then you say, okay, now you've got the npm install working, which initially is broken for some of these frameworks. It installs the wrong thing. It doesn't install the icons and so on. And then you say, well, just build it basically a hello world or something, and then it fails. So that's what I'm saying. All of these 9 frameworks. If you're just going to ask the AI to go build you a hello world simple page, you're going to end up with install problems, and you're going to end up with something broken just getting to that. Okay, just with Claude Opus 4.6. John, I haven't tried Vuetify. Maybe you got that right, but all of them couldn't do it. So there were 3 phases where I had to get the install right, and then I had to get the hello world right, and then I had to give the instructions as a setup before I gave it the prompt to build. And this is what should be an LMS.txt. All of them have something like that. So that's what, in order to one-shot John with the model of Ant design Vue 3, all connected up, Rails, everything connected, with just screenshots and just a TypeScript domain model with a Pinio store and some functions and really nothing else. But given some magic instructions that were current, they could all do it. So, for example, Element Plus needed to know about some other components and needed to know about a resolver that it didn't know about initially. Without this, it fails. And you kind of give up and go, okay, I'm giving up on Vue. I'm going to go back to React, which is a pity. Yeah. So naive UI, it didn't have the config provider. Didn't know about that. Which without that, you're not going to get any styles. Let's see, Prime Vue. Prime Vue had some problems with styles as well. Honestly, I don't remember the details. I don't really want to go too much. Get ahead of my skis here. Quasar is such a mess. I don't know what's going on with that framework. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do anything. I don't know. It's got a different system, as you know, different CLI. It doesn't use Vite. It's got its own thing going on, which has confused the hell out of the AI. Went for minutes and minutes and minutes. Couldn't figure it out. Reka came back. Was able to do it very quickly, but as you saw, the styles all wrong. The components are not that rich, so you're going to spend forever trying to figure out the styles. And it couldn't do, for example, modals. Couldn't do. So it had to be told about that. But it's not that much text. I mean, if you had LLMs.txt and just something like this, you would, in some setup phase where you have to do some tweaking before you give it the prompt, they all do pretty well, actually. Shadzian, it had to be told not to use, it had to be told to use the correct MCP server, like I told you before. You asked me about tooling. Tooling is great, except it was a wrong tool. It's out of date. So mostly there's nothing wrong with Vue, and I don't believe it's a training corpus problem. It's just a setup problem, and I think the AI is just not. It needs a little bit of help for each one of these frameworks. So it's not, honestly, I think that's a pretty rich little problem I gave it, and it's all, John, it's all hooked up and connected, and you can click around. I gave you the link, you can try it out. Screenshot and TypeScript file and some setup, all fine. Same sort of thing that you can get from Shadcc and React, excepting this thing's reactive, this thing will work. Doesn't have race conditions, doesn't have non-deterministic runtime problems that you guys all know if you try to play with React. So anyway, so my journey to React took me straight back to Vue, fix the problem, and very happy with that. So I'm about to wrap up. Let me go back to where I was.
Yeah, we're slightly running out of time. I saw that you also have a recommendation section in your presentation. Maybe you can just shortly say some final word about some final thoughts about all of that.
Okay, can you see my screen again?
Yeah.
You want me to click through? So my recommendation is this, that all these frameworks should have lms.txt if they don't already. And these come in two versions. There's the full version and the skinny version. And that they should use a skill. I'm not a fan of MCP servers. So that's why, Michal, I really endorse using a skill and a binary. The problem with MCP servers is, especially if they use standard IO, is that they leak and you end up with 50 of them running at the same time for some reason. I don't quite know why. I think it's a broken protocol. So like Michal did, skill, and if you need some binary or some script, that's the way to go, just like you did. I agree with that completely. But I think my recommendation is just a little bit of help. Hey, Michal, thank you. You've run into that problem too, I guess. So this is my bottom line, Pavel, is lms.txt with a little bit of help, and spend a little bit of time setting the thing up first before you give it the prompt. Right, that's just the help that you need, and then you're going to have excellent Vue.js applications. Okay, that's it. That's me. What it should contain: some rules to bootstrap, some idioms for the framework, some ways of verifying that it works, and then just loop through this a few times. Make sure the bootstrap's right. Make sure the idioms for each framework are right, and make sure you can verify that. And then give it the prompt and domain model. You're on your way. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Yeah, that was huge. Nice comparison with all of that, and a lot of information we gather from your talk. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and always nice to see you there. So yeah, thanks again. And yeah, let's not waste one more minute, and I will just pass the ball to John. Hi, John. John is a creator of Vuetify, and always welcome there. So passing the ball to you, John.
Hey, thank you very much. So great talk, David. And I really was excited to hear some of the pain points that you brought to light, and how the experience differentiated. And hopefully today I can show you all why Vuetify0 is the next big thing, because I've spent, since the AI first took off with ChatGPT, and I think it was late 2022, about as much time as you can on a computer, working in Vue, working in Vuetify, working with AI. And in late 2024, it became very clear that there wasn't going to be enough funding to be able to set up Vuetify in a way that was stylus, or not stylus, unstyled, without a potential catastrophe. And we already had so many issues going from Vue 2 to Vue 3 that I said, well, let me explore what building a headless Vuetify would look like. And about December of last year, when Claude kind of blew up, I had used everything, Grok, Codex, like the highest plans you can get, tried to work it all into my work process, and ended up with a suggestion of trying out Claude in early December, and it kind of revolutionized things. And not only did it kind of kickstart Vuetify0 into a massive push, we had spent so much time on the foundation of how Vuetify features were built since the initial version that putting together the foundational pieces, not only were they pretty easy, it laid a path that has kind of showed me that I believe this is the way that people should interact with frameworks going forward in the future. So the idea is, and let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So a lot of pain points are starting to bleed through with AI development in terms of relevant, correct, current information regarding the feature, the software that you're working with. And so from the beginning, everything in Vuetify0 has been developed with AI in mind. At every single corner, there is a piece of functionality or attention paid to make something work as well as possible with AI. So what is Vuetify0? Well, as I said in the beginning, Vuetify, since version 1, has implemented a specific pattern, a registry pattern for how we communicate between features, between how we communicate with framework level configuration, and how that trickles down to components. The way that we have done this has changed over the years, but the underlying principle has stayed the same. And this kind of formed the baseline for what Vuetify0 is. Now, I'm going to go through these slides. I'm going to kind of talk here, left and right. The slides are okay, but if you really want to, if you get bored looking at the slides, definitely go to the number .vuetify.js.com and just browse through the docs while I'm talking. I would definitely love to see or hear some reactions from people of their thoughts as I kind of go through this, because I just want to try to address issues that are becoming very noticeable as we continue in this AI era. And as someone who has their finger really close to the pulse, everything that I've done here has tried to essentially distill the essence of what Vuetify provides with its functionality down to a set of headless UI primitives. Now, normal UI headless libraries, they give you components. And as you saw with some of the slides that David was showing, that a lot of the configuration is done, and I guess this is how React does it as well, through a lot of provide components, like components that wrap others to provide functionality down. Now, one of the cool things that Vue 3, I guess not just Vue 3, Vue in general, but we definitely took way more advantage of in Vue 3, was the ability to have plugins, essentially, where you have this global singleton state that holds information that the underlying UI components and features, they reference to determine things like theme or breakpoint or localization, etc. But let me go in here a little bit about AI first, and AI native. What does that actually mean? People can say it, but what do they actually understand what the tools that they're providing actually do? Well, I've been working with MCP since the start. I've been working with skills since the start. I have followed closely on LLMS, text, and everything in between, and they all serve a different purpose on your path to developing an application. So MCP servers, which we do have, for me, these are the context. And earlier when I mentioned, one of the problems is the current, how current the information the model has is on a feature. Well, the MCP server for us, and we'll expand on this in the future, but essentially is an easy way for the AI agent to access information regarding any pages on the documentation, because it's all in Markdown. Super easy. But another cool thing that the MCP server allows us to do is to help hook up things like the skill MD, which this is what I believe is the bread and butter for most agents working today. And this is essentially an outline, kind of like a skeletal structure that explains what features and functionality exist in whatever library, whatever package that you're using, and how they may apply in different situations, kind of giving the AI some examples of, hey, in this scenario, this is something that you might want to use, or this is an example of this, et cetera, so on and so forth. Okay, super cool. But the other thing that we added, and I don't have LLMS text up on here, but we have a full, every single time the documentation is generated, the LLMS and LLMS full text file is generated and is accessible from the website at all times. But we also, we added Ask AI on the docs, and this is something that we're experimenting with. Obviously, we wanted to look for feedback, but the idea is, if you're going through the documentation and you have questions, or you're curious about something and you can't find an answer, you can communicate and talk with, we have a Claude instance that we host on the Vuetify API that you can communicate and ask questions, and not only get back answers, but receive back charts, receive back links to be able to open up in the Vuetify0 playground to mess with it in real time. This is a great tool that makes it easy for users as they're working the documentation. Now, I know that documentation isn't super big right now because everyone's using AI, but I am bullheaded, and I like looking at documentation. I like making things that are impactful. And there was a point in time where Vuetify was known for its documentation. And I think that I really have brought that essence back with our docs. And like I said before, check those out as I'm talking about this. I'd love to hear feedback. And then lastly, one of the things that these other organizations apparently don't have are AI-ready scaffolds. So since early on, one of the things that I really enjoyed working on in Vuetify was creating very minimal baseline projects or setups that gave users confidence in, oh, this is how a good project is set up, or having everything completed for them so they can just get down to the work of what actually matters. So we spent a lot of time completely rebuilding our Create, it's called Vuetify Create platform under Vuetify CLI, which now allows you to essentially one line create Vuetify or Vuetify0 projects with Nuxt, Pinya, any kind of integration that you can imagine just from the command line. And it integrates perfectly with AI. You can literally, as you see here, create a new project, hook it up instantly with MCP, start your Claude agent. I'm going to say Claude here because that's what I use. And it already has access to everything that it could need to start working on your project. Okay. So we talked a little bit about MCP. Like I said, for us, it has a lot to do with providing up-to-date information. One of the things that I don't talk about on here, but that is a very important factor to how AI native takes place, is we have a very aggressively detailed documentation process. Everything that is generated for the API and the docs is actually generated from TypeScript. And the AI has access to all this through not only MCP, but through the files themselves. So when they pull in the files, they don't even have to use MCP sometimes. They don't even have to use the skill sometimes because it exists at the component level. So earlier on, I talked about, most headless libraries, they give you components. One of the things that I wanted to do with Vuetify0 was focus on some key things that I feel that we kind of failed with in Vuetify. Now, Vue is reactive by default, and while Vuetify's performance has definitely improved over the years, and we are definitely happy with its current state as of some releases ago, it's not to say that we haven't been criticized for performance over the years. And as I was breaking down the features and functionality of Vuetify, what I realized was only a small subsection of functionality within our feature set needed to be reactive by default. In fact, most cases didn't need to be. The only thing that needed to be reactive was the selections themselves, not necessarily the options that you pick from. So what initially started out as a headless component framework quickly moved to a combination of headless component and composable. Now, what this allows us to do is create the underlying functionality that is implemented and composed in the higher order components, but at a lower level where users can then choose to use them on their own basis for their own creations or whatever that they can imagine. And in this process, we're able to provide two different avenues of approach. We give users the underlying functionality, the closest to the metal as you can get, as performant as it can be, scoped to a narrow set of functionality, its job, what it's supposed to do, hyper-focused on what it's supposed to accomplish. You know, this isn't a Vue use copy or even an addition. It's something entirely different. This entire framework was built to make it easy to build things like Vuetify. So these design principles that go to all of our features, we have a very detailed set of rules and philosophies in the repository that help guide the development. Most of the development is done by AI with review. And one of the awesome things about having so many AI native features in Vuetify0 is no matter which setup you use, whether it's Codex or Claude or anything in between, you're going to have a good experience. And so far, our internal people communicating with us with internal testing have said as such. Now, one of the things that we are also able to offer different from other headless UIs is the concept of a core or plugins. Okay, so this is a kind of an overview of some of the categories that we have of features. We are also breaking them down even more distinct so that you can, because different composables are built in different ways, sometimes for different reasons. And we have all of this laid out so that we don't make mistakes about this in the future. But one of the cool parts here, like I said, I wanted to focus on are the plugins, because plugins are what separate us from the rest. What you're able to do with our plugin suite is take any feature that's in Vuetify0 and easily turn it into a global singleton. We call it the Trinity pattern. And this works with our plugin system that makes it easy to, for example, set up and generate a theme at runtime that propagates down to all your components. Now, all of the features and functionality that are in Vuetify0 stem from the core registry. It is basically a map on steroids that has been configured to provide the underlying functionality that is used by one or more features in Vuetify. So what that means is that everything that makes Vuetify tick at its very lowest level in its current form has been distilled down to this individual feature. And everything that is else that is built in the framework is composed from this initial feature, in the same way that Vuetify composes different components to generate higher order features like calendar, date picker, etc. So here's an example of looking at some of how our composables are constructed. As I said before, the focus and scope of all of our features are very narrow in that they have a job that they do very specifically, and they do it well. And what this allows us to do is to break this functionality up. It's easier to test, it's easier to expand upon, and it reads better, understanding that a particular feature, for example, breadcrumbs, as you see here, is a composition of step, which is a composition of selection, which is a composition of registry. This makes it easy to test. This makes it easy to find and eliminate issues and bugs, and it makes things extremely consistent. Things like data tables. Now, I don't have it on this slide, but we have some new features that have not only come out, but are about to come out, such as Kanbans or data grids. All of these features are compositions of these lower order features that I've created, that we've created in Vuetify, that we take selections, tokens, registries, filters, nested, all these different features, and we combine them together to give the ultimate composable. Now, the composables that we have, a lot of times they have a single narrow goal, right? But how they accomplish that goal may need to change. Okay, so if you think about the concept of a shopping cart, you go to checkout, they give you multiple options of payment. Those different payment options are kind of like different adapters. And then when you submit your payment, in the end, that adapter converts that information to something normalized that it then hands off to another function in the back end for processing. Okay, well, there are some features in Vuetify0, mainly at the plugin level, but also at some lower order features like data tables that have custom adapters that allow them to, one, hook up into auxiliary services, or two, change underlying core functionality. So if you've used Vuetify at all, or any of our date components, you know that we have a global date feature. And in that feature, you can configure it to use one of, I believe, 4 adapters: Luxin, Moment, DateFNs. And then we provide a built-in one, a default one with Vuetify. And since these adapters are based off of a specific, community agreed upon interface, users can just swap them in and out, maintain their same functionality, but then have access to potentially unique or specific functionality that only exists for that particular library. However, on the underlying portion of it, we're just using an interface of particular functions that are on that adapter. Okay. Well, this now extends to multiple features. So choosing a different underlying logger or storage adapter, date. For data tables, if you've used vDatatable in Vuetify 3, we've got vDatatable Virtual, we've got vDatatable Server. Well, in the same fashion, the create data table composable in Vuetify0, which we will also have a component, it's just not ready yet. But the underlying composable itself has adapters for client-side, server-side, or virtual implementations. These features are built to be refactored. We are actively moving them into Vuetify 5 for our next major release. So performance and talking about it is great, but if you have nothing to track it, if you have nothing to monitor it, if you don't even know what to benchmark, like, what do I even check? This is a problem that we had in Vuetify. We would run into a component or a feature that was suffering performance issues, then we would recreate the performance issue, and then we would have to ad hoc put together some test that allowed us to accurately show, and then we could test against the performance to try to fix it. None of that. So from the beginning, everything has been developed with performance in mind. Like I said, most features are default non-reactive because they don't need to be reactive. This allows you to opt in at the lowest levels, or if you so choose to use components, then it's just a standard experience. Everything just works. You don't have to do anything extra. But we have over, I think it's over 300 individual benchmarks tests. We have a benchmark preview, or a benchmark viewer where you can see on individual features themselves or as a grand total in the framework benchmarks. And then we are also, after version 1 release, we will be keeping, forgetting the word here, but it's called like flashpoint, screenshots or whatever at different points, different integral points to where we say, okay, here's the performance. And then that way we can track it over time. That way people can look and say, okay, hey, this thing is, in this particular functionality at, 100,000 items is having an issue. That means that we can't use it for that much data, or that also gives someone an opportunity to say, oh, hey, that's slow. I can maybe look into the code and find a way to make it faster. It helps identify things and it makes it easier to track this over time. We have over 6,000 total benchmarks in general that cover up to 99% code coverage. And like I said, performance has been a #1 priority. Talk about MCP, not going to spend too much time on here. It's super easy to get set up. You can use it with get set up with our CLI. You can get set up with, there's instructions on the actual MCP documentation, and we actually run the MCP server. So if you don't want to run it locally, we have a HTTP transport that's up and publicly available that you can use. Same thing with the create Vuetify, with the Vuetify CLI, we have the new create packages that allow you to start your application pre-configured and AI ready with your skill MD already set up, MCP server already set up, Vuetify0 features already set up for you. And right now we actually are in the process of wrapping up a builder feature where you'll be able to talk with AI and give it your specifications, and it will put together your component framework together, and then it will export it to Vuetify0, and that you can look at it and then choose to export it to a project locally later on. It's pretty cool. So some of the other things that I've tried to focus on in the documentation, there's a lot more to come with this, documentation, when you go to any documentation, it's usually very overwhelming. There's a lot of pages, there's a lot of information, and for someone like me who is very bullheaded, and I don't like to read a lot. I like to kind of look, browse, and see it. Okay, I just dive right in and see what feels natural. For some, that doesn't work. For me, that works great. However, one of the things that I identified during this process was, different skill levels of people really, if we can scope level of difficulty on pages and information, then we can conditionally show features to the user based upon a skill level that they select. Now in the future, we're going to have a little test where, you could say, hey, you don't know what your skill level is, take a test, figure it out. But in this way, even if you're working with AI, you can still customize the documentation to fit your skill level as you're working with the AI agent yourself. One more thing I want to say on this is, and this is a feature that we're currently expanding, but you can actively use right now, using the Vuetify CLI in any Vuetify0 project, and this works in Vuetify to an extent, but Vuetify0, you can get a unique URL that when you click opens up the Vuetify0 documentation, and it only contains information pertaining to the features detected that you're using. And this makes it so that not only is the documentation an interactive experience, but it's very customizable, and it's the idea is to encourage users to spend time and learn information in there, as opposed to it just being a repository dump of thoughts and ideas. So if you want to check it out in the browser without installing anything, we have a playground that's actually specifically built with Vuetify0. We do have a regular Vuetify playground that you can use Vuetify0 in. That's the standard play.vuetify.js.com. But we are actually going to be rebuilding a lot of our properties using different design systems with the underlying headless functionality of Vuetify0, and starting with V0 Play, which is, again, completely built with Vuetify0 and Uno CSS. So definitely check it out. So kind of to go over everything that we covered here, Vuetify's, I think the claim on the homepage is your AI already knows Vuetify0. We provide all of the functionality and information you need to create and start developing with Vuetify0 and any AI assistant in less than 5 minutes. We offer a headless first approach. This headless first means that we offer not only component level functionality, not only do we offer plugins, which I didn't even go into how, you can do things such as you have a pagination and you use this pagination, and then you figure out later on you get a new requirement and your boss says, hey, we actually need to be able to support multiple languages. Can you hook that up? No problem. Just pull in the Vuetify0 locale adapter, you plug in your strings, and automatically the pagination will turn on to accept that plugin because it's now active and automatically picks up and starts working. This is the same thing for a lot of the features in Vuetify0, where when you bring in new plugins, new features will turn on for other primitives. This ensures that we have very little code bloat. Things aren't used if they're not used. But we also provide, a kind of an extensive, we provide the ability to even take those plugin or those composables further with the extension of adapters and being able to allow users to enter their own custom adapters, but also use ones that we've supplied out of the box. It just makes the functionality more flexible. Heavy focus on benchmarks. Okay, so performance first. This has actually been useful in identifying some issues in our own code after the fact. So we are heavily focused on not only continuing this, but making it public as we have, and letting users be able to see, hey, this is actually performant and how it compares. MCP CLI, again, great tools for all skill levels. We've spent a lot of time in working on the DX in Vuetify in general, but all of that has kind of filtered down to Vuetify0 as well. The skill-based docs, the docs, I love documentation. I'm going to be spending all kinds of time in there. I've added everything that I ever wanted to display and be able to communicate information to the user, from mermaid design charts to interactive AI documentation, being able to ask questions, interactive examples, everything that you could possibly think of, we've got it in there. And then finally, you can check it out in your browser. You don't have to download anything. So what's happening next? As I said, right now we've already started refactoring Vuetify on the next branch, which will correlate to Vuetify5, to use Vuetify0 under the hood. We're starting with the upper level functionality in the plugins, and then we'll be moving down to underlying components. This doesn't really mean much for the user, except for that they're going to gain new functionality and performance, but we expect no breaking changes beyond possibly types. We are having a rapid development cycle on Vuetify0 because the functionality is new. Does not mean it's not seasoned, because it has been distilled down from what we've been doing in Vuetify since 2016. So we are looking to go stable in July of this year. We're currently in alpha, moving to beta next month. We're going to be working on more adapters and more expansion to the functionality that it provides, more plugins, and we're going to continue to expand on it. And if you want to get involved, you can again check out the documentation at 0.vuetify.js.com. The source is on GitHub, complete MIT license, no gimmicks. I have no plans to put ads on the site, maybe for some Vuetify services, but we're going to be making some big changes to Vuetify ecosystem websites coming up soon. Be fun to talk about, but that is the conclusion of my talk. Vuetify goes headless, and thank you all for checking out. Please, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. I genuinely wasn't aware that the state of the art was as bad as it was. I typically don't look at what other frameworks do. That's probably a weakness of mine. So seeing how poorly a lot of them have performed over the course, in David's presentation, in a lot of regards, shows me that there's a lot of hope to show people how it's really done. So, and last thing I'll close with that isn't on the talk, but I do think it's important because a lot of people are probably like, okay, cool, headless. I don't want to have to worry about the design. Still got you covered. The next phase after Vuetify0 is called Vuetify Paper. We actually already have a PR up for it right now. And essentially, you could think of Vuetify Paper as design systems built with Vuetify0. So take any design system, public or internally created, and having that built using Vuetify0 as the underlying functionality, which is going to then open up 3 avenues of people to be able to get into the Vuetify community because we're no longer material. We have the headless at the very, very base to Vue, super fast, super performance, super flexible. Vuetify Paper is going to come in with custom design systems, existing and new. And then Vuetify, we're figuring out how that's going to, where it's going to differentiate itself because we will be moving design systems of Vuetify Paper. However, we have lots of components in Vuetify that exist out of the design system. So look for more information on that in the future. But we have a lot of really exciting things that we're working on and definitely hope that you all check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, John. As always, a lot of information we have to dive into and try it by ourselves. I believe you guys will try Vuetify0 on your side because I did, and I was quite impressed with the results. So David, if you have a plans to try it one more time on your experiment, that would be really great.
I kind of did it for him. So while I was giving my talk, I started a prompt and I gave it all the information that David had, and I told it to use Vuetify MCP, Vuetify0 skill, and abstract all of the visual features into individual features, Vuetify0, and implement it. And this is, I haven't checked it, I've just now checked it. So I don't know how well it works, and I don't know what the underlying Vuetify0 code implementation looks like. But this is using just the tooling of Vuetify and for the duration of my talk, so 30 minutes or less. So I really think that, and if you really want to, one thing that you can, somebody asked to see different design systems. We did implement, and we're going to be doing a lot of design system implementation, but this is an open source project that kind of demonstrates how Vuetify0 might integrate into a project. You can use it for anything from just taking advantage of some of the underlying selection-based functionality, or using the components to do visual stuff, or you just want to have it to manage your theme. It works with anything. It has no correlation specifically to Vuetify or material design. It is simply the functionality that powers it.
Nice. I see that, David, you have a question or want to discuss some?
Yeah, I do have actually a couple of comments. Thanks, John. Impressive that you could actually just fire it up like that. It's awesome. I regret not using Vuetify or V0 in my experiment. Couple of things. So the table I showed, which is number of components and lines of code, is kind of interesting. So I actually selected element UI based on I thought it was more enterprise compaction for me for my kind of shell app, but also it only created 8 components, 8 files with the minimum line of code. So I think in terms of I don't know if you've tried to code or tell the AI to talk like a caveman, but have you tried that? So you got to reduce number of tokens because the context is really precious, and you only get 40% of the context before it starts talking rubbish to you, any of these things. So tokens really count. And I chose Element UI because 8 files and the minimum line, like half the number of lines of code, even less than the other frameworks. So that was a big choice for me, because that's only going to get exponentially bigger as you get bigger and bigger and bigger apps. So I'm interested in, I know you did it quickly, but I'm interested, how many components it took to do that. The range I saw was 8 to 42, and how many lines of code. So that is one question.
Okay.
And then MCP servers. So it's awesome to see using HTTP transport. That I think MCP servers, honestly, I think they're going to go away, because 2 things. One, heavy token requirements in your context, every single context. You got to put in tens of thousands sometimes of tokens for MCP servers, even if you don't use them, which then means you got to fiddle around for each project and tell it, or for each chat, what MCP servers you want actually to save the context. Whereas skills is just loading as, just the front matter. So that's 100 bytes versus maybe, 5 bytes of tokens. And that makes a difference. But the bigger problem with MCP servers is that some of the clients don't release the resources after the end of a chat. So, and I saw that both with Augment Code plugins in both VS Code and IntelliJ, and I also saw that with anti-gravity, which becomes unusable with some of these standard IO MCP servers. And I have 128 gig of RAM on my Mac, so I didn't realize this problem until for a day or two, and then you realize I've got 500 MCP servers of the same thing running, and it's obvious that every single chat has fired another standard IO MCP server and just not cleaned up the resources. So you got to do HTTP transport if you're going to do it, but you still have the problem that you're loading, I don't know how many kilobytes of context your MCP server is, but it's going to be a lot more than your skill. It's probably a couple of kilobytes versus, versus 100 bytes. And you only have, if you have a 200K window, you actually only have 80K usable. So if you're going to blow 200K on your MCP servers, so I don't use any MCP servers anymore. And I think Michal,
I'm spoiled. I use the 1 million context, so I definitely say I'm spoiled. But that's also why we've added so many levels into it. Now, a lot of the times, the MCP server will just say, "I'm going to use the skill," and then it queries and gets the latest skill, and then goes ahead and proceeds forward with that. I think, honestly, yes, context is. Here's why I don't think MCP servers are going to go away, because context is only going to increase. And I think that they're different tools for different situations, and that for me using Claude Code, it prefers to use some tools more than others. And I would imagine, I don't know, this is conjecture, but I would imagine that it's possible that other AIs might find, or other models may find different features have higher value in getting information about Vuetify0. Right. So the big challenge with making something new, I mean, you pointed it out in your talk about how, well, React just has so much more training on it. So it's like you've got this better result in some cases. And I think that is a problem with the tools that these plugins and libraries are providing to users. Now, it may come to pass that MCP doesn't end up being very useful in some situations, but it may be useful in others, and where you don't have access to a skill, or maybe you have an auxiliary service that you want to be able to have access to some information, and that model has no training on this new feature that's been out for 6 months. So this is going to rapidly change, I know, and I don't even really consider myself an expert on this front. I just only speak from my experience, and as someone who is a extreme Claude Code power user and has spent an extensive amount of time configuring so that its output and what it generates, at least with Vuetify0, is as good, if not better, than anything I would be able to come up with on my own. I don't know if you guys can see my sharing right here. Is it on the screen?
Yeah.
So it looks like, even though I told it to break up the functionality, I didn't say to necessarily put it into components, and it seems like it felt the best way to achieve the goal was to just use composables. So when you were asking David, how many files did it create?
Yeah.
Actually, beyond the default that gets generated with the Vue project, you got the tsconfig and Vite and stuff like that. We add our Vuetify ESLint config. This is something that's new, but as far as explicit new stuff, or is this one data file, and it modified the existing pages that came with the template.
So just so I understand, it's one. My counting, I was only counting component files, but you're saying basically just 2 files.
Yeah, the file or less.
So that's really impressive, actually, because I think, I'm not on the same page with you about context window increasing, because it hasn't increased. You got in the year it hasn't increased, and so I did AI research, just so you know, in 1994, where I had to build my own neural network and do medical AI research. So I know how these things are built. And I can tell you that to get a little bit more context, you need an exponentially greater server configuration just to do that. It's an exponentially hard problem to go increase your context. And so it's compounded by the fact that AI is producing all of the slop in the code base. So you're actually creating more output than you have space in the input for. And I don't believe it's going to increase dramatically. And I don't know that it's got any better. I mean, you got 40%. You got a context window of X, but you only can use 40% of it. It degrades rapidly. So even if it gets bigger, it's still degrading. So I'm not on the same page about the future of context.
Well, I'd love to I'd love to actually talk with you more about this. I do want to answer some other questions, but I think that there is definitely something there. Again, like I said, I'm spoiled because I use the 1 million context, and I use Vuetify0, and so everything is like, yeah.
That's the other problem about the 1 million context that you point out. That's Claude. Claude is not the greatest. I hate to break it to you, but there's 2 other models that are actually better than Claude today. One is GPT-5.5, which actually behaves itself and listens to instructions. And the second is Kimi 2.6, which is super fast and super cheap. And both of them have much less tokens, but they're actually both more useful than Claude.
Well, you see, you're just concerned with different things than me, though, because I never run out of tokens. I've never hit my limit on a max plan, and I've configured Claude to where it's more detrimental to spend time flip-flopping and switching to different services than to just understand that it's not always that there's a lot of subjectivity going into it. And I know there's a whole thing with Claude and regression and whatever else. That's fine. Maybe their models are better coding in some way or shape or form. But right now, that's what I use, right? So I would say that
I'd love
the
to see you set up
results.
Claude, because you've obviously nailed how to do Claude. So I would love offline to see what you're using in terms of the setup.
Yeah, we could take this offline. All right, so a couple questions I've seen. How has building such a library changed with the use of AI? Where do you see the greatest boost, speed, quality, docs for solving issues? So this is really fun for me because Vuetify has a massive ecosystem. We have lots of auxiliary websites and features, different DX tooling. And the most difficult part, I've been doing this for over a decade. I've been in open source over a decade. I've been doing this for over 12 years. The biggest difficulty, at least with the way that I've done things, is that it's getting funding. I don't really care about making money. I spend very little time on it. I spend more time making free stuff. That worked out great when Vuetify was super popular, not so great in its later years. So, I have a job that I work now that's able to provide for me and my family, because, when I started this, I had a 4-year-old and now I have 3 kids. So, things definitely change. But what AI has enabled me, a solo entrepreneur, that, yes, I do work with a lot of contributors, but it has kind of solidified over the years, and we kind of have our small group, and that's where it's at. Excuse me. But what it's allowed someone like me to do is, instead of, okay, I'll give you a traditional day whenever I used to, when I would work at a job where you've maybe got 2 or 3 projects. And if you're a developer on all of them and maybe they interact together and you have to work on a new feature that touches all 3, right? That would potentially be, 3 different days of work and lots of consideration looking between different features and how they connect. And I'll give you an example of something that I did. Whenever I started working with Claude in the beginning of December, I wanted to make some improvements to the Vuetify admin. It's super low priority. It's just for me. I've never really put a lot of work into it, but I was like, hey, let's see how well it does and what it can do. And spent some time hooking up new features. And one of the new features I wanted to do was, if you've ever been to one of the Vuetify websites, you might have seen a little banner pop up at the top, and that's managed through the API. And we recently added a new feature for me called Vuetify Link, which is just a short link service, because I wanted to make short Vuetify links and track them. I just thought it'd be fun. Anyways, long story short, I wanted to be able to create a banner and then generate a Vuetify link from the link I provide. And it turned out that this required changes to 3 different repositories: the Vuetify API, the Vuetify admin itself, and then Vuetify0, which is our software that we use to kind of connect all of our ecosystem sites together. So like if you log into one, it works on all of them. Normally that would be, working on Vuetify0 for a day and getting everything set up and then getting a release and then working on the next feature and working on the next feature. But now with AI, it's more of kind of like orchestrating a plan over multiple directories. So putting together a large plan that at one time it's got 3 different agents working on these 3 pieces, and it finishes it in 20 minutes. So one of the things that I tried to do whenever I saw, I was like, wow, this is really powerful, is like, okay, how do you rein it in? And I could give a whole talk on all the things that I've done to rein in the AI to make good decisions. It basically boils down to rules, ESLint, and skills, And anyways, so it's allowed me to do more in the past, let's say 6 months, than I would have done. Then Vuetify0 would have never been even half of what it is right now without this, because I spent so much time on the foundation with no AI that whenever it got to not no AI, I used AI to help me build it, but it wasn't like I'm building now. It was like I have a code file, or I had like GitHub Copilot up, and I say, hey, take a look at this, or I copy the text file and I paste it into Manus and say, hey, review that, or connect the thing with correct repository with Grok and say, hey, review this repository. I would do that. I would get help and assistance like that, but nothing like now. Now I'm doing things like I shipped an entire new composable in one day, because turns out all of the features that I built underlying already support a rich headless Kanban, right? So things have just kind of opened up to where now, as a solo entrepreneur, it's now easy for me to manage 4, 5, 6, 7 properties, whereas before I would have to try to, communicate with a bunch of open source developers and then follow up with them, and then, okay, did they charge the right amount, for what they did? Did they do the right work? I got to review this. It's like kind of gone away a little bit. We still have contributors, but you have to have a passion for what you're doing and a vision for what you want to kind of accomplish, because if you find your challenge and meaning in programming through solving the actual code problems as opposed to solving problems, then yeah, you're probably hating life right now. Hopefully that answers Michael's question. There was another one. Is it possible to show a demo comparing 2 completely different design systems using Vuetify0? It would be great. So the closest thing that you can see to that right now is if you were to go to the Vuetify0 website. I'll just share real quick. And this is going to be, so right now there's no design systems because that comes with Vuetify paper. We haven't really got there yet. But what Vuetify0's theme engine does, and I'll actually go to that page really quick. I hope I'm not hijacking too much, but I can talk about this for days. Okay, so this is the Vuetify0 theme plugin. It's completely generic. It has no built-in styling. It has no built-in numbers or excuse me, no values for themes. It provides everything that Vuetify's theme system provides at a base level, with the exception of some higher level CSS variable generation. And one of the cool things that we added in this is you can now supply a palette to the theme generator, and then from that palette, you generate your theme colors. You don't have to, but it's just a very convenient way to do it. And this is actually an example when I was talking about earlier of, you know, kind of how things are structured and built in Vuetify0, starting with this registry that goes into a model, selection, create single. And it doesn't show it here, but create tokens is actually built off of create registry. And then use theme combines these together and an adapter system to then provide the features and functionality that you're seeing here. And this just generates code. And this is like a lot of the examples that are on here are meant to be to really help you understand. It's a little bit different thinking, because if you've ever used Vuetify, you're thinking about components and you're thinking about like the visual aspect of it, but you know, that's not taking place here. It's just the functionality that we're focused on. But the examples are very rich, lots of information, multiple files. You can open them up in a Vuetify playground and, you know, mess with it inline, make some changes, play around with it. It's very cool. Oh no, it dropped it. But what I was going to say is here is that you can see we've got this little thing up here where themes, you can change the different palettes that we kind of have already pre-configured. And the idea is, you know, it's a palette of colors, and then there's a light and a dark variant. You can also create your own themes. You know, we have like high contrast, different, lots of different options, and you can make your own. And that's like, you know, that's cool. But yeah, in the future, what you're going to see is you'll be able to configure this for your design system. And the examples, you'll be able to select what design system you want to see the example in. And so you'll be able to use our existing ones or ones that you create. It's going to be awesome. Totally going to be awesome. But you can also see we have extensive guides on this stuff. So if you were to go, where's the color palettes? Oh, here we go. So we have this palette section now where we actually give you generators where you can generate themes using static palette generators for Material, for Tailwind, Radix, Ant, and I believe Leonardo, which is from Adobe. And then, so yeah, the idea is that, you know, it's flexible enough to go anywhere. It has nothing to do with Vuetify. It has nothing to do with Material. It has everything to do with the underlying functionality that powers your application. Hopefully that answers your question, Mohammed. Next was David. How many components did it take in lines of code? Oh yeah, it actually decided that it didn't need to use components because most of what it was showing was selection. And yeah, I'll have to, I wonder what it would do, but we have, you can see we have one of our, where's that? So the dev key is an example. You can actually go and see the source and how it's built and what it's like to, because you don't have to do this, but this is like, oh, if you want to build a reusable framework, this is what it would look like to do with Vuetify0. Oh, and the best thing is, so I didn't mention this, but the original Vuetify was built in render functions. Vuetify2 was built in render functions. Vuetify3 was built in TSX because it was the easiest transition to go from render functions. Vuetify0 is built 100% with Vue SFCs and Vue macros. Nothing special, nothing funny. So that means that when you not only look at our source code or the code that generates, it's going to look like code you would see on the Vuetify, or should be the Vue documentation. It falls exactly in line. Everything's TypeScript first. It's a brand new experience. It's just about, you just come out and you say, hey, what do I need to build? And from there, just being able to not only get together the functionality and or components, but then have this ability to have this core framework, right, that propagates automatically and communicates with itself. Only if you put in new plugins. You know, if you don't put a plugin in to use a certain thing, then it just, like for example, if you don't use the logger plugin, We just console log. Everything gets a fallback. But if you do use the plugin, then you get a rich output that can use, I think we use Pinot for the Vuetify0 docs. But yeah, so it's hopefully going to be much more palatable for users. I mean, compared to something like if I were to go to anything in Vuetify, V card. It's like, okay, most users, they see this and it's like, oh my goodness, how much custom stuff do we have here for how we generate types and how we do our props in the factories for that, and generating all like this is Swahili to most people. Like they see this and like, I can't help with this. I mean, maybe they could with an AI, but so the idea is, okay, now everything in Vuetify0, if I were to go into any of the features, so packages, all right, so all of the components, so let's just take a button that has multiple parts. It's just a regular SFC. Everything's extremely documented. Everything has rules for ESLint and how to build it. Everything's very uniform. I'm very precise about. I like things being crisp. I like sharp corners. And we take care of everything. We take care of events. We take care of accessibility. We take care of giving you the tools to style. All of the styling that's on Vuetify0's documentation is actually done using the data attributes. So you can hook up Uno CSS and like a Tailwind preset, which is what the Vuetify0 docs does. And you can start styling a feature by just adding a data dash whatever class. It's super cool and super easy. It's actually how I started building this from the bottom up, because I was like, all right, I'm just going to use whatever everybody's using. And Uno CSS is awesome. And it's so awesome that we actually ended up making a preset for it, so that if you're still using Vuetify, that you could actually use the Uno CSS preset and then it'll tree shape automatically all of the unused classes. So it's great. It's awesome. But everything here is built. This is nothing here is not standard Vue. Everything you see here, from the destructuring to how the types are handled to how generics are handled, all of the macros, define options, slots, attribute, all of this stuff. This is all baseline Vue stuff. Everything is built to be performant, and everything is built to be clean, and it is, hopefully going to represent that when people start trying it out and giving feedback. Question from my question to John: how was the Vuetify development journey before AI and after AI? Well, yeah, so I just get a lot more done now. My life is less stressful. I have I have 3 kids, so and a wife and a dog and a brother-in-law, and I got problems like everybody else. So, running the Vuetify business and coding and everything was just like very stressful on my life. And I'd handle it for many years. And once I got Claude Code configured and got into a good development cycle, like literally things started changing in my life, started having much better relationship, with my wife, and not being as frustrated all the time, because it's difficult whenever you're coding and going in and out of hard concepts and multiple different, upwards of imagine having 15 different projects that you're trying to keep your head wrapped around on top of the business and stuff. So it's drastically improved the welfare of my life. I'm less stressed, which is really good. And I'm able to do more stuff at higher quality. And I hate to say this, but I'm able to rely on other people less. I don't mean that in a bad way, because we have some amazing people that have contributed to Vuetify for close to a decade. But if not that long, very, very long time, and absolutely appreciate all of their help. In the case of when you're trying to build new stuff, when you're trying to raise the state of the art, It requires a lot of focus. And what I've found out now is that if I wouldn't have had Claude, if I wouldn't have run into this era of AI, that I had no idea how hard my ambitions were going to be to achieve with my current setup. But now being able to effectively have a loyal development team at my fingertips at any point in time, I'm able to move really fast through things. So if you think about, if you worked 10 to 12-hour days before, imagine doing 5x, but continuing to work those 10 to 12-hour days. I mean, you move at rocket speed. So hopefully that answers your question. David, we'd love to see how you configure Claude. Yeah, I don't know if we could do it here, but it's a lot of it is already in the repository. So a large part of the configuration of Vuetify0 is in here with these rules. But the biggest thing, and I don't see people talk about this a lot, and maybe I think it's more important than it is, but I have spent a lot of time on a philosophy document. I think David, or maybe it wasn't David, it was someone, I saw something someone mentioned where it's like, I spent all this time trying to get the AI to code like me, why don't I just code? Well, it's like, well, maybe you should spend that time configuring your coder, agent to code correctly. Maybe your process is jacked up. So spend a long amount of time, and this has been iterated, and the process for iterating it has been improved over, but a long amount of time defining the philosophy behind how I develop, essentially. Now, this is also kind of evolved with a combination of some things that, I feel like I have learned quite a bit from what Claude has been able to do. But I have everything explicitly and excruciatingly detailed defined, like how things are built, like what is the mindset behind how we develop things. And what I've noticed now is with continued tweaking, and the tweaking becomes less and less over time, that I spend less time making changes in configurations or making changes to the reviews that I'm making with code. So yeah, maybe next month I'll do a talk on Claude Code. I'll speak with the people in charge. We'll see. Next question was, is V0 LLM agnostic for devs? LLM agnostic, yes. Does that mean, like, so yeah, you could use it in, well, first of all, the MCP server is absolutely agnostic because we have an HTTP transport. You can just use that. Now, a lot of the times it's going to just grab the skill. That's one of the tools available to it, among other things. So it's going to grab that skill. And if I were to, let's see, that skill file is actually, it's in the repository. And you can see it here, and there's some references that go along with it, but ultimately it's this file that outlines use and category and says, hey, here's what you use different things for, here's what you have available. And as this list has grown, so has its ability to concisely reproduce code the way that I want it to, because I now have so many examples and so many various use cases covered. I'm actually starting to put in, I forget what I'm going to call them, but we have these categories that define the ultimate category of a feature, but that category, that feature might have multiple underlying, I think the name I'm going with is shapes, but essentially like how that's built, like a create single composable is built differently than, let's say, a create breadcrumbs composable, because it's a higher order component that derives multiple underlying features to generate it, right? So anyway, so the point is that the more specific and concise you can be, the more, because the AI can do a lot with a little. And even when you get beyond this, when it's like, okay, well, you don't have this skill. Well, in the end, Vuetify0 is still going to be in packages, right? So it's going to be able to look at the code. And then when it pulls up the code, and it goes to look at something, here's what it's going to see. You see composables, create registry. This is the bread and butter. I never have to write this again, and I can't tell you how happy that makes me. It's done. It's written. It exists forever. And everything in here is detailed for multiple reasons. Number one, because this is what we actually use to pull out this. We have an API generator that generates based upon these comments. Super awesome. Makes it easy to maintain. But not only that, but everything, remarks, documentation reference, inline examples that show you the whole story. The AI, if it looks at this file, it's going to automatically know. So it's like there's so many ways for you to influence and the AI to also just stumble upon doing the right thing, which is why I think we've had so many positive stories internally from people trying out Vuetify0, because there's so many different ways to kind of get to that end goal, especially with the probabilistic nature of AI. But having so many avenues of entry makes it a lot easier to stumble to the right path. So yeah, when you look through all of the, and some are probably better than others, we'll definitely be doing sweeps to make it, this, like, probably 60% of the components are of this high quality, but everything that you could possibly need. So while you're developing and you're looking at the code that it's generating, this is all, not only is this what we use to generate the API, this ends up as an IntelliSense in your IDE. So whether you're using JetBrains products, VS Code, cursor fork of VS Code, when you go to hover over functionality, like create registry, you're going to see all of this. So even if you're not the one absolutely implementing each and every feature, you now have a way to get more information, like you're in the IDE. And you're like, oh, well, that's cool. Oh, look, it's got a link. And then you click on the link and you go into it. And then you go to that page and you're like, oh, it's got a little tutorial on this feature. Let me do this while the AI is working on it so that I can understand this feature better and I can ask it questions about it later. So like that's kind of the approach that I'm going to it. David said, if I understand it, you have abstracted the framework and for the user human, it's all data driven, very exciting. I haven't seen anything like that in Vue.js. Reminds me a bit of WebEx from AI perspective. It's token light. Well done. Thank you. Like I said, I have, and I don't know if everything that I've done is right. I am admittedly, I am a good engineer by brute force, not an intellectual powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination. I'm a high school dropout who spent 6 years in the infantry. So I'm by no means representative of a academically smart person. But what I do pride myself in is the ability to take complex ideas and complex functionality and break them down into kind of, small aphorisms, like small consumable that I can understand, right? That I can wrap my head around, because I am not like, some genius. But I've been doing this for so long that a lot of things just kind of click and make sense. So I'm really hoping that as people look through this and they'll go, oh, wow. It's not that this is like super great or does anything absolutely amazing, which it does. It's that it's the essence of what I think made Vuetify good in the beginning, and that was choice. Great documentation, choice, great community, constant updates, something that like, hey, if we use this product, it's going to be here in 10 years. And as a matter of fact, in a couple months, that'll be the 10-year anniversary of when I first published Vuetify to GitHub. So it's been a lot of fun. And, I have obsessed over the front end for 12 to 14 hours a day, every day for the past 5 years at least. And I've never been more excited to be doing what I'm doing right now, because for me, I'm a problem solver. My pride in the code comes in the organization from it, and I can teach an AI how to organize code to look good, and what I think looks good, and what priorities that I think matter. And I think that that's going to be kind of the difference. Anybody can make anything with AI, but it doesn't mean it has good taste. It doesn't mean that it's going to have, something that actually like looks good. It's only going to be able to go off of something that it knows. So yeah, hopefully that's good response to that. Someone said, is in Vuetify0 now, can we download component locally as Vue.jsTalks? Absolutely. So everything is 100% tree shakeable. So if you just wanted to take a look at a button, let's do it right now. This is exactly what you would have in a regular project. Okay. You would say, okay, I want to make my app button. Okay. And that's it. So we can say, okay, button.root. And if I'm lucky enough, look at that. So I'm talking about, you get this in our playground because we're using the Monaco editor, but it's the same thing that you would have in your IDE. So you can, oh, that's what I can do. So content, slot. And then now I can just come over here and say, and just like that, we could start to hook up. There's various features. There's like, let's see if it lists it here. It should. No, that's just the button root. Is it over here? If you have VS Code, there's this new thing. I forget what it's called, but you can enable it. They talked about it with, it like gives you rich, you don't get all this crud right here. Like it makes all this look nice. So this isn't obviously the best, but there's multiple pieces to a button component that, so you just click on the damn link, huh, John? Here we go. Share this tab instead. So every single component, and I'm still working on 100% normalizing this, but it's pretty much like this everywhere, is you're gonna have like this anatomy. This is kind of similar to Rekka. I definitely saw some things that I love with Rekka that I thought was great. Definitely borrowed from that. Like these hover, I like being able to hover and check out the API in line while you're here with something and be able to understand the concept. But there's different parts, we've got icon, content, loading. These are different pieces that you can, use. If you don't use them, they get tree shook. But then they provide different pieces of functionality that, again, we need to build Vuetify. So most everything here started out with, we need this to recreate functionality in Vuetify. So, we need to build these particular pieces or features. So you can absolutely just import a single, like all of these are set up to where you can just copy and paste this. And all you have to do is have the Vuetify0 package installed. You don't have to bootstrap anything with Vue. You don't have to do anything like that if you don't want to. If you're like, oh, I want to use some plugins, I think that's pretty interesting. I want to be able to support features. Like we use post hog, and we want to be able to have a system that easily propagates this information down. It's actually what we use inside of Vuetify0 to do snack bar notifications and stuff. But essentially, it's just a composable that is comprised of, what's the architecture at? So yeah, it's composed of registry, selection, and group, and tokens to make features. And it's just the idea. Oh yeah, this is an example. This is actually the dev. I had this hooked up to post hog to just test around, but it's like you can just hook it up and you're like, oh, I don't want post hog, I want launch darkly, and you can just swap over to launch darkly, and it still works. But it's a global plugin that you could use to manage notifications. And you're like, oh, well, why would I want to manage notifications? It's like, well, if you wanted to manage, let's see, what do we got here? Snack bar. Say you wanted to do a snack bar, and you're like, oh, okay. Like this right here, underneath is, mostly just some styles, but the functionality of managing the toasts and the order and the underlying management of the queue is all done with the notification feature. So it's very, very flexible. I mean, anything that you could think of, any possible use case you can imagine, because you're not just limited to components, and you're not limited to, oh, I have to install this whole thing. If you want to use the notification thing, then you just, or the notification plugin, then here, all you do, boom, you import it, app use, that's it. But that's only if you want to use those. But if you just want to use a component, that feature you don't have to do, anything for. Like I was saying with like pagination before, pagination is a component that has some accessibility attached to it. If I were to look inside this DOM, I don't know if it's going to, I can get this on the screen. It's not going to show it. But if I look into the DOM under this, is like an area label, area current, area select, like all these different area things. And one of those is the is language, which we just had default to English. And but if you decided to, again, hook up the locale plugin, then you become able to configure that. I should have a recipe in here. I don't. But essentially, you can say, okay, I want to use localization. All right, go to localization, import the localization plugin, create your messages, set your default, and then you're off to the races. It just works. Works with SSR, works with Nux, works with everything. No shenanigans. And only when you plug this in does that feature turn on for pagination. So it's not like pagination comes down and has this feature in it and doesn't get tree shaken, and then if you choose to use it or not. Because that's what happens with Vuetify right now. The entire core is non-tree shakeable. So if you don't use anything special with localization, we still do it because our components, we have it require localization. But now, none of that's required. It's just all optional. Is Vue, okay. So hopefully that answers your question. Next one was, does it work with LSP? I find, replace, find usages, string uses more. I don't know. I used to watch more what Claude was doing in real time, but since they released Claude agents yesterday, it's kind of scratched a need that I've needed, because I usually end up having like 5 or 6 or 7 terminals or sessions running at the same time. So I haven't really looked recently, but I do know that I have spent an extensive amount of time, at least researching with AI, of like what matters for tokens and what things that we can do to reduce token counts and to make sure that, basically we're as lean as possible. Someone says, do we have anything similar like this, the command to generate the component and code base directly with all props? Yes. So right now we just have our playground, which is, you could technically, I mean, I could right here probably, I haven't tried this out. I'm going to do this and it's probably going to fail, but I'm going to say, show me an example of using group with no CSS classes. We'll just see what it does while we're sitting there. So, all right, so it's generated this, and this is a cool thing. So this is generated live. I've got some stuff set up on our API to understand how to build things with Vuetify0. And just like that, I can, oh, of course it wasn't broken. All right, well, this, this right here on a good day would, whenever, I could open up in a playground and then I can start messing with this immediately. But one thing that's in progress right now, and there's a PR for it, it's our builder application. So this was one of the dreams from immediately when I started working on Vuetify0 was I wanted people to like, okay, a task comes down, a problem to solve comes down that involves needing to do something in Vue. And it's like, okay, what does, what does that look like? Okay, well, I need to determine, do I need to support themes? Do I need to support, different breakpoints? Do I need to support localization or dates or any of the things that we kind of have here in these plugins? Do I need to support right to left? Permissions is a new fun one. All these individual plugins, oh, do I need any of these? Because instead of just figuring out what components you're wanting to get, you're actually building your application. You're building a core of your application that's going to manage the overall functionality that the underlying components and features are going to consume. So in this builder, you're going to go through And there's going to be two things. You'll be able to talk with an AI, but you'll also just be able to select and say, okay, I want these features, these plugin level features. And then, okay, what kind of components do you have a design system yet? If you have a design system, I'll probably have a thing where you can upload and it'll tell you what components are available, components that it sees in it. But essentially you can say, okay, I need, you get your list of 15 components or whatever that you need broken up in your design system. You say, I'm going to need these 15 components. And it's going to say, okay, we've got this already. We've got that already. You can combine these together and give you an output that when you click it, you'll end up on the Vuetify0 playground with this set up as like a project, because you can make new folders. So it will have like, components, and then, my feature.vue, whatever. It'll have everything set up where you'll be able to interact, see it here in the browser. And then whenever you're like, I don't have the ability to save right now. It'll be coming. The URL, it's encrypted, right? So you can bookmark whatever you have whenever you're working on it, and that'll save it. And in the future, we'll add saving just like the regular Vuetify playground. But when you're done, you're like, okay, that's good. You can just click here and you can click export, and then you can download a zip your project. It's a Vue project set up using our Vuetify CLI, and then you're off to the races. And then from there, when you got your project built, you could instantly go in and you could load up your terminal, and you could say something like, and I'm just going to do this in mine. So CD apps docs, Vuetify analyze. It's going to give me an output. I'm going to change my screen. Let's see, copy, paste. Okay, so now when I come here, this right here is only showing me API and features of things that exist in the Vuetify0 docs. Well, obviously that's a lot, so there's a lot here. But you'll be able to do this in any one of your projects, and where you'll be able to just only see features that are in that project. So if you end up having a situation where you can't, you don't create a design system or a app that can be reused. Maybe you're like in an agency and you end up having to make multiple projects. Well, then as you go between those projects, you can say, oh, what's going on with this one? And then you can pull up the docs for it specifically, and you can see all the features that are already available and have, a better experience of locating things. And then also, like I was saying before, say you're a beginner, you're like, I'm starting out in Vuetify0. What do I do? Just come up here and click on beginner. And then the only things you're going to see are stuff that's going to make it easy for you to work with it. We've got a super long guide on how the documentation is a living representation of, the framework. Everything is hooked up to, be interactive, letting you know when content's been updated, giving you information about different features, telling you what the skill level is. Like, hey, this is kind of, being able to understand, hey, these are different skills. We encourage the user to use AI, when they're a beginner. I mean, we encourage everyone to use AI, but as a beginner, you want to use AI. And then, but as you move on, and we're going to improve this, right now it's very rudimentary, but essentially, okay, hey, here's features for an intermediate. Like, what is the meat and potatoes behind Vuetify0? So you can break your content down, and then you can actually, consume things better. And on top of that, and I haven't talked about this, so if anybody knows me, my online alias has been Zero Skills since I was 12, I think. I turned 40 last December. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity. I mean, I even got the tattoo. You can't see this on my arm. I even got a tattoo. So I thought, oh, this is a perfect time, Vuetify0 Skills, because I want to offer not just tours and how to use the documentation, but I want to be able to teach people how to, not only just use Vuetify0, but use it better, or how to improve their workflow. And it's just so easy now to provide various functionalities and features, because I have all of this Vuetify0 functionality. It's super easy to create. So I have all these things put together for like tests and guides and walkthroughs, where you come in and you're like, okay, you can just learn about, have a decent experience to understand, okay, here's what's available in the documentation, here's how to navigate things, right? And you get this nice experience. And then, from this, that's not supposed to be there. But from this, you could maybe move on to taking a quiz and like understanding like, hey, what features would you like to learn about? And just trying to make it a actual good user experience. So absolutely, you can just use any small or large piece. You could just pull in the themes. You could just pull in the breakpoints if you, I mean, any piece, and it's going to be, we've checked it through and through. It's properly tree shaped. And it impends no, extra detriment to your project to not use everything. The next question is Vuetify0 stable or wait for July release? So I'll say kind of what I said earlier, and this is kind of what I've been saying in most talks, in that Vuetify0 is new. It is in alpha, but the features that were recreated are the ones that have been in Vuetify since the beginning. So the same philosophies or principles. So because that, to me, it's extremely stable because, it's literally, everything that you're seeing is just to recreate. I mean, there is some additional features beyond Vuetify now, but up until about 2 months ago, everything that was in Vuetify0 was 100% there because it existed in Vuetify4 at some level, and we needed that functionality to exist in Vuetify0. So I would say that it's absolutely stable enough to play with. We will be hitting beta next month. That means that most of my time with tweaking code, unless there's some substantial bug reports, will be spent on curating and polishing the documentation, user experience, and the tooling in preparation for a release in July. So all I can say is I stand by my stuff. I've been doing this for I've been doing open source for over a decade. I hope that the Vuetify's track record is enough for people to know that this is going to be supported. This is going to be the next evolution, and then obviously we come with Vuetify paper, and then we'll end up with this 3-tier system where people can get in at any level based upon the level of customization that they want to handle. It's going to be great. It's awesome. I'm just going to keep reading through the questions.
It's actually an endless process, but I like that we have such hot discussions during this session. It's really great, and I wish you guys will connect between each other and between us with Epic Max, so we can discuss things like that even in the future as well. And yeah, I think it's time to wrap up. Actually, we spent more time than we had. We have a question from Mohammed about the migration process from Vue 2 to Vue 3 and Vuetify 2 to Vuetify 3. And I hope, Mohammed, you will join at least the Vuetify Discord or whatever source you're going to propose John to keep contact with you, to Mohammed, and discuss any question you have in there. So, yeah, I would say thanks a lot for John, for David, and for Michal for such cool topics and for a lot of information we covered in this session. This always will be that was recorded, and we will put it in the YouTube, so whoever is not in the session will be able to check it out as well. So, thanks again, guys. I hope it was a nice session for you as for me as well, and see you on the next one, probably next month. YouTube channel is you can try to write the Vue.jsTalks in the search bar, and you'll be able to find it. It should be to Epic Max related. So yeah, thanks guys, and see you next month. Bye bye.